My name is Wago Joy, and welcome to Conversations and Plugs, where African business stories come to life.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Cliff. And welcome. So one of the things we noticed with Wago was guys are watching, but not subscribing.
Yeah.
Right? So please subscribe, like, so that you can get more of this content and that will alert you when new episodes come out. And today, we have an incredible guest with us. And I think what we were looking up with Wago is just like, so who is this guy? And I think a couple of things stood out for us. We have an activist, an architect, a musician, and a founder all rolled up into one. Dan Aceda, welcome to Conversations and Plugs. How are you doing?
I finally made it. Onto the show.
No, we're the ones who made it.
After superstars have come before me.
Yeah.
Watu wakulima wadogo wamepata nafasi.
No, you are a superstar in your own right.
We're sitting in your office.
Yeah, we are sitting in his office,
Yes.
by the way.
No, I'm happy. I'm actually quite excited.
We're the ones who are excited to have you. And by the way, for everyone, this is where we record our podcast at Semabox.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool to have the founder with us.
The brainchild.
The brainchild.
Would you consider yourself the brainchild of Semabox?
Yeah.
I would. I love
would.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
But I just want to take it back because even before we dive into the founder of Semabox, you have an interesting nickname, Cheesy. Where did that come from? Because I was just like, this is Dan Cheesy Aceda.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Or what was the
Spell
inspiration?
it out also.
It came from CHIZI.
Yeah.
I think it starts in primary school. There's a friend of mine called Kavi, DJ Kavi,
Mm-hmm.
who had deskies, and he used to talk about mtu kuwa cheesy in terms of like just how we were interacting in class. And then there were two, those cheesy 15, and then those, I don't remember that, cheesy 20, something like that.
Yeah.
Then I go to high school, but at that time there were no assigned. It was not assigned to either me or him.
Okay.
It was just something. When we went to high school, this thing came back. I don't know how Kavi infiltrated the high school guys, but somehow, because we didn't go to the same high school, but somehow a classmate now gives me the nickname on
Cheesy.
purpose. Yeah. Dr. Jones Mureithi. Now Dr. Jones Mureithi. Yeah. Those days he was just Jones. So he's the one who actually starts it. I don't know. It was one of those things, we were getting to know one another because it was in first form.
Yeah.
And we were figuring out people's skill sets. And I think he was flattering my skill set at the time. Although he was not that fast. But it kind of stuck for a large section of my life. Though I dropped it. Eventually nilichoka.
It never made it to the artist.
It did. No, it did. It made it for my first and second album.
Okay.
And then after that, I didn't. I just thought it was time. Let me just say that.
I have a question for you, especially when it comes to the nickname Cheesy, because one of the things we look at in your life is there's this theme of your activism.
Yeah, social justice.
And somebody was shouting here how many times you've jumped onto a cop car. Not because voluntarily.
No.
Not voluntarily. What's that about? And in terms of your passions and stuff like that, what is this activism side?
And where does it come from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that really comes from my dad. My dad is a very big tenda wema, nenda zako kind of guy. Always been like that. He's always tried to avoid or to leave things better than he found them.
Yeah.
I think that's it. So I've always believed in that as well. I believe that there's a way that things should work, and we should be trying to get it to that way that they should work. How things end up is not maybe how they are designed. I don't think I plan to be arrested or anything like that.
Well, no one does.
No one does.
Okay. Some people do.
Some people do. It's like
I didn't really plan it. It's just that
that's true.
you find an issue that you're passionate enough about to talk about
Yeah.
or to put something on the line for.
Yeah.
And I always feel like activism is an analysis. It's not an activity. Like somebody
so good.
analyzes what you've done as
And says,
activism.
you activist.
Yeah. But you are actually you're actually advocating for something that you believe in. Yeah, you're not in the moment, you're not playing a role.
Yeah.
You're being yourself and you're trying to say, I really believe in this thing and I think you should too.
Yeah. Wago, do you think, I mean, when we look at activism, maybe that's not even a way to labels in terms of what you do. It's just you are moved by, I see a problem.
Yeah.
And one of the things Wago and I have been happy on for a while is around, there are so many things that are not right. There are so many things that are not wrong.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the things that are not right, is, for example, you'd have a cause. People, I mean, label it a cause, but you're just like, listen, there are systemic issues going on here, and no one is talking about them, and I have a voice and I have to talk about them. Is that how you look at you changing and lending your voice to that, and what are those causes? What have those been for you, and especially business or creativity?
The biggest cause for me now has just been I guess the one that I've been consistent the most on is just the kind of business space for creative work.
Yes, business space for
That's
creative.
been the most important one for me. That's one I feel I'm the most consistent one. There's some political ones, but those ebb and flow because some get solved. And then
onto the next.
Then you move on. And I'm not really permanently interested in the political cause. I'm only interested in it to the extent that it affects my life.
Yeah.
So when it does cross with my life, then I'm interested in that. But the one for the creative industry and people working in the creative industry, that one I'm pretty moved about. I'm concerned, even now, that we don't have enough IP protection, just broadly in Kenya, but in Africa.
IP protection?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not enough infrastructure. But by way of example, the IP protection we have in Kenya is for FMCG. So if EABL has a dispute about their trademark, or Coca-Cola, or someone like that, or Unga Group, everything is going to be mobilized to solve that. But if a musician has a dispute with a company about his music, because the IP is the same. It's for EABL and for the musician, it's the same.
They can't be the same.
There's going to be less. It's the same. Because IP it's property. It's intellectual property. It's property.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're considered.
So their IP rights will be enforced always stronger than a creative's IP rights. But IP rights are the same.
Yeah. But what's driving that? Is it because they can afford better lawyers, or is it just a norm as what drives that? Why would that be different?
No, you're right. I think they can afford more, they can throw more money at the problem. So yes. But the money gets you efficiency. But the attention from the system is what we are talking about. The system needs to give attention to IP causes, whether or not they're from a big company or they're from a small guy. And that's the way I see it.
Okay, borrowing from some of my readings, sometimes if you look at like the US economy, one of the things that drives that economy, for example, is a number. One of the lagging indicators that they look at is number of patents.
Yeah, exactly.
Filed.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic indicator for innovation. We don't do that here because
there's no innovation metric in Kenya. Not that I'm aware of.
Wow.
There isn't one. Yeah.
Remember, we're still talking for the US, you're looking at licenses.
Yeah.
You're looking at licenses and patents.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Kenya, we don't have that. There is no innovation metric. Guys, we are still talking about M-Pesa. M-Pesa is 1990s.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. We still talk about it as innovative today.
It's actually...
It's been around for what? 18 years?
18 years. They were celebrating 18 years.
18 years. Yeah. But they were beta testing before. So, kuna katime hapo kidogo.
So... For example, this podcast, some of the things we did was we went and filed trademark.
Yeah. Takes forever, right?
I wouldn't say forever. I did it myself, actually. It was the weirdest thing because...
Cliff is our in-house lawyer, by the way.
Fine, I have some legal background. But I just wrote to Kenya Industrial Properties Institute, and I went there, and fine, there were some weird things, and then I used AI to just figure out the whole process and stuff like that, and I filed a trademark. It took a while. It took like almost 3 months, and that was me repeatedly. I'm just like sending emails, but the beauty is they were replying, and I would call. And then they guided me through filing. I'm not even sure that I filed the correct trademarks, but it sounded like they did based on what I wrote.
Yes.
But I filed trademarks for like conversations and plugs and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool in terms of just filing the trademark. But when I saw the IP, whether there's a journal that comes out, I think every quarter, I went through it and I was just like, wait a minute. For me, even one of the things I want to be doing is going through the IP journals to just see what guys who have filed stuff in there, which is incredible. And even the most ordinary of things.
Yeah.
So but it's interesting how you talk about IP and stuff. That's crazy.
But however, your challenge is more of the system doesn't recognize creative arts and the innovation within creative arts.
Even without. So there isn't a policy position on innovation as you see what Cliff is saying. This is a metric we use to judge how we are doing in innovation.
Yeah.
There's no such rubric in Kenya, at least not by the government of Kenya. They don't have that. Because if they did, you would see a lot more attention around innovative ideas that are there.
So even then, we're not building the frameworks to actually track some of these things and reward them.
Yeah.
Because
exactly,
it's a badge of honor in the US or some markets to file patents, to file
trademarks, to file not so much.
And incentives as well in terms of how much are you innovating.
No, here there isn't. And government definitely is nowhere on the map. The market is. So the market actually does know that this thing that I'm doing is special. And everybody around you kind of knows. And then if you go to places where people are trying things, you'll find that people, they know and they understand that that's a special thing that this guy is doing, and they respect that. And they trade in it. So there's a lot of trade in IP from market side.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that if we could get government to look and kind of be as, 5% better, there would be a lot more value
extracted from that.
Yes, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is the credibility of the idea. Yeah. And so if we know that you have a certificate that means something, then we can then trade more on that.
Yeah. And I probably just need to...
Because you can sell patents.
Guys do sell patents.
Yes.
And my... okay, I need to do a bit of research, but my understanding of even if you look at music in the US as an example, you can correct me. Patents, for example, or even drugs, some last up to 50 years.
Yeah.
Right? And after 50 years, your formula is released, I think. Yeah. And then that's why you have the original drug versus the generics, which are basically... It is the original formula, but now just because they're called different, they're called generic as an example. So and people now you begin to earn for the patent.
Exactly. I think the patent is usually 50 years after your death.
50 years after your death.
After your death. So during your lifetime, you own your thing, and then 50 years after you die, it becomes public property. But people go around that by investing it in a company, which, as you know, never dies.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what I'm clear about in life is nothing is wasted. And I feel that there's still threads that resonate in what you're doing in your activism that you're applying to your business today. Are you able to talk more about the themes that you're seeing in terms of even in your activism, that's still happening within your business format or your values?
Yeah. Because if you're doing stuff that you believe in, it comes down to the kind of general principles.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest principles for me personally is I have a very, very strong belief in the commercial viability, technical quality, and I guess social quantity of creative work in Kenya. I really, really, really do believe in it. And so I'm happy to invest in it. Even if nobody else is going to invest in it with me, I'm happy to invest in it. And I'm happy to be involved in the work that we need to do to improve our standing in society and then also our effectiveness in business. And maybe that's the thing that translates, because when we're doing the work to get more IP protections, more investment in IP from like a policy, legal perspective, it is also a good thing for business, because it protects the businesses that will make that are based on this IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's also very much of a long-term view and kind of plotting backwards and seeing what needs to be done for that future vision.
Yeah, I would say that.
So I'm wondering about, and because this podcast, we mainly speak to entrepreneurs, what are some things that entrepreneurs are not doing in terms of protecting their work? And what should we do in terms of, like you see, Cliff filed the patents.
Yeah.
I mean, the
trademarks.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that because I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you both should speak more about that process.
No, I think filing is a good step.
Yeah.
I think people should actually, KIPI, Kenya Institute of Kenya Intellectual Property Institute.
Yeah.
So I think you should definitely do the work. The process can be much smoother, but please just go and do it.
Yeah.
No matter what, it's worth it.
Can I interject for one moment?
Yeah.
So in the creatives, we're thinking about photographers, everyone who just works on art.
Yes.
Okay.
So and there's two things. For your business, you need trademarks. And even if you create something totally new, a patent, that's going to be at KIPI. For your music, you get a copyright. So that's going to be at Kekobo, which is a sister organization. And I know the government is saying they're going to merge them. Fine. It's supposed to do a Kenya Intellectual Property Authority, something like that. Which I think is a good idea because I think things that are similar should be together.
Yeah.
I do think that just the awareness, greater awareness and greater execution on these ideas you come up with is the real protection of the work that you do. If you build like Conversation Unplugs this logo, the work that you do to distribute that logo and associate it with yourself is kind of the best protection, even better than the certificate they give you. And I think one thing you see different in the West to here is in the West, they already kind of have that built in because that's been happening since the 1920s.
Right.
So there is a lot of, by the time they are going to trademark the logo, they've been pushing it so hard already. You already know it's them and it's their logo. So then the paper is like part of the process. Over here, sometimes I feel we wait for the logo to get the paper, then
we get the papers.
We start the distribution, and I think you should just push forward.
And the funny thing is, this thing for registering these things, mine was from horror stories, where you start pushing something, a guy has gone bought your domains, so the guy is just chilling. Because it's just like, are these domains? So you have guys who are just, domain hunting. In terms of, these guys will require this domain.
Yes.
You have guys just doing weird, shady stuff in terms of, you find your brand, somebody has opened X, and you have no claim of it because you've never filed it anywhere. No one even knows. So mine was from that place of, we're putting out a brand.
Yeah.
And I know how guys are.
Yes.
A guy will go open a page and you have no claim over it. You have no evidence to show that this is actually registered under your name or whatever. And that was predominantly the motivation.
Yeah, and I think it's a good motivation. I just want to say that when you think about how startups, business is working now in the world, you're winning on execution, not winning on your idea. So even when you trademark the thing and you cross all the T's. If you don't execute, another guy is executing.
It's profit first.
Yeah. There's a really interesting story by the Airbnb guys. I forget the guy's name.
Yeah.
Where there's a Ukrainian or there's a German company that just always clones people's
I have
sites.
seen that thing, yeah.
Yeah. And the guy's like, they cloned our site and then they told us either we buy the site they've cloned. Or we lose the market share in Europe. And the guy's like, if you can execute better than us, then Sisi had to do a job. We end our execute.
But those guys were actually featured somewhere where they've done that for a lot of businesses.
So many guys.
Their job is just like, you go, look, what businesses have been done? Can I clone it? I register it, I do everything, clone the website and begin the business model. And they sell it.
Yeah.
So when you come into the market, so again, it's also ring fencing some of those things. And I've seen some guys who try and do such things in markets.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think every idea, I have a very low, that's the right way to say it. I don't put a lot of investment in the idea. Yeah, I'm always more interested in seeing the execution.
Yeah,
because I think if you've thought about this, I think another guy has thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think the game is going to be who moves faster.
Yeah. I mean, I've always had the saying of there's no new idea out here in this world. And a lot of them are just evolutions. Whether it was M-Pesa, it was an evolution of payment. Somebody saw a problem, you got a different use case, and we can go on and on and on and on.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I remember when we were recording like season 1 and we kind of just were kind of afraid to launch, and you were just like, launch that thing now. Jump off the cliff.
Just
jump
take
off
action.
The cliff.
Just
do it.
Launch this thing.
So thank you, because you're the one you and Doris really pushed us. And I'm grateful because 1 year later, I can see why implementation is never the idea.
Yeah.
Because the number of times we have pivoted is so much just because we chose to be in the arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to segue into something else where one of the things we do on the podcast is we try to figure out like different themes and stuff like that. I have a question for you, especially when you went to school, especially uni. What you studied?
Yeah.
What was that about? Architecture.
Yeah.
You're an architect. Did you finish?
Design. I finished.
Did you get certified?
Design.
I finished, yeah. I am. I was actually very good even as an architect. I finished. I didn't do the board exam because I had. I'm sorry, but I had a very low opinion on the board at the time.
You're apologizing to them or us? Or
I'm not sure.
I think they left. The guys left. So I have a better opinion of the guys now. Okay. Still low opinion of the entire system in general. But yeah. I was always interested in architecture and urban design because connect the previous conversation. I'm very much a doer. I want to do it. And that was like one of the best places for me to practice that motivation. So, and there's a lot of stuff that's in architecture. The rigor, the practice, the commitment to concept development that I have in my life still today. And I see it, and I also have it in music.
And that's to a ghost thing where she was also like, listen, nothing ever gets wasted.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, looking at you in terms of you and your architect's mindset, in terms of what are those things that were transferable? I know you've talked about how that comes into play.
Yeah.
So it's permeated throughout your music, throughout your discipline as well.
Iteration. Remember, if I told you what are the things that I think came from architecture, one is iteration.
Yeah.
Because the process of making a building starts on a pencil, right? So that's the first version. And then you make your first model. Then you analyze that, and then you make your second model, and you make your third model, and then eventually you have a model that fits the business case and fits the user needs. And then you build that. So that's the second is, and I think is more important than the first, is analysis. What they really teach you in architecture is to see. That's what they teach you. They teach you to look and to see.
See what?
Things.
Okay.
So they spend a lot of time in architecture. The most important process is site analysis.
Okay.
Most important process. You go and see where you're going to be working. And you start to understand what's my context. So then what are my constraints? And what's the opportunity? And there's a lot of time spent in getting students. We used to spend a lot of just walking around bushes and locations. Because what the guys were trying to teach us was you need to see. You need to teach yourself to look and then teach yourself to see. Because your work as an architect is to solve a problem for your client and to solve it sustainably. Because we are going to use concrete.
So if you solve this problem,
this thing's going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
So if you solve the problem, it's got to be solved in such a way that it's sustainably solved for a duration. In fact, they say doctors bury their mistakes. Lawyers hide their mistakes in jail. Architects have to live with their mistakes forever.
Wow.
Even after you die, if you do a bad building, when we walk past it to say, this guy was an idiot. And you're long dead.
Long dead.
Yeah, which happens in Nairobi,
Yeah.
If you have a bad building,
I can name a couple, but I won't name a couple.
And everybody knows among architects, we all know that's a bad architect.
That guy, we know what building is.
That's a bad architecture.
Terrible.
Yeah. And so those are things that have come into my life. For instance, after architecture school, I don't fear the first draft. I don't fear the first version anymore. I'm like, and I also know that the first version is not the final version. So I'm not afraid to let go of the first version so that I can make the second version. But I'm not afraid to publish the first version because that's what I have now.
Yeah. Transferable skills.
Every nothing goes to waste.
Nothing.
So what was the first version of Semabox?
Ooh,
the first version of
that's a good question.
was in my house.
Okay.
Where were you? Where was your house?
Just in the house.
Where is the house?
I had like a room in Nairobi, Hapa.
Somewhere in Nairobi.
I had like a room, and I had a friend who's a podcaster. I won't say who, but he'd been podcasting quite some time before.
Which year was this?
He had been podcasting way before. Yeah. But the podcasting stuff, like exclusively doing it, was really triggered by COVID.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else we could do.
So this was pre-COVID?
A little bit pre-COVID. And then just because... Yeah, because I had another studio that was for music, and we had a live room and everything. And this guy used to come there and record this thing for 40 minutes. Yeah. And no music, nothing. He just say, just give it to me the it is. I found it so strange. I never really understood, but I gave the guy this work anyways. And then we had to move studios because the Go Down was redeveloping their space. So at that point, the studio was in the house, and then I still recorded this guy.
Yeah.
But then at COVID, is like more. So he used to show up with more people, which was really challenging for me because now it's just my house. Why are you bringing COVID here? Unaniletea corona. Watu ni wengi. Yeah. So that was the first version. I used to record it. I would give him the episodes like later in the day.
Yeah.
Then eventually we had a conversation here with Chris Mungai, Joe and Melissa of Africa Podfest, Amani Maranga and Lee, and a few other podcast guys, actually in this room. And we're like, we could do something for podcasting because there's nothing we could do. Because Baraza had opened the year before and now there's COVID, so there's
no one coming in. Yeah.
And there's not a lot of creative works. Like, let's do something. Like, sawa, but nobody did anything about it. A month or two passed, I come back. I meet Maurice. It's like, you guys had about podcasting.
So
what's
Maurice
happening?
Is the nini for
Maurice Otieno.
Yeah.
And then he says, why don't we do something? I say, yeah. He said, why don't we do something this week? Then we, sawa. So we put the studio up, and I guess this is version 2.
Yeah.
And then we started. So the basic model is we record from 9 to 3. Then we rush home because of curfew. Then I edit everything at night. And then tomorrow...
We bring it.
Yeah, we repeat. Mm-hmm. It was a pop-up studio in that suitcase that's over there. That suitcase used to carry the gear.
Oh, that's a small suitcase.
That suitcase, the green one.
You when we met you told us an interesting story from your eyes.
Yeah.
In terms of, first of all, you're a producer as well, as a music songwriter.
Yeah.
You couldn't wrap your head around some guy coming to your studio to just record audio and you give it to him.
Yeah, just speech. I could not understand.
And then he had fans.
Yeah, he used to tell me, I've listened, people have comments. I was thinking, this guy...
Are the people in the room
is
with
on
you?
the high grade.
Yeah.
Huyu jamaa is on the foreigns.
On the foreign.
Huyu jamaa. Yuko serious. I really did not understand the concept because I'm coming from music. You have the melody line, you have the harmonies, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the instrumentation. So I was like, what's this guy doing? And he actually just used to sit in a chair and talk.
So that was your first interaction with podcasts?
Yeah, that's the first time. And at that time, I don't think even I understood it as podcasts. I don't think I understood it.
It's like it's audio.
I was like, this guy's doing some audio thing. I think...
And fast forward 4 years later.
Yeah, then like we're now really making podcasts.
And now he's on a podcast.
Now he's on several that he's been on.
It was sasa tuna ziunda. It was a really big shift. And I guess coming from music, it needed to be a big shift because music is such an intensive production process.
Yeah.
Well, podcasting is not so much.
So-
and that's the magic of podcasting.
Yeah. Again, when we were doing this, we noticed you ride in just waves.
Yeah, fast
Like
mover
transitioning.
advantage.
Like, of course, you've kept a few identities like activism, but music to podcasting and entrepreneurship. Like, how has the transition been from a business perspective in the business of music to the business of podcasting? Is there a bridge? Like, what's that in your eyes? What's that been?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing is what I was just talking about is that the production effort on music is much higher.
Yeah.
And so the production of music is a lot more expensive than the production of podcasts.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that production of podcasts is easier. No, it's that the production of podcasts requires different things than what the production of music requires. Also, the agility of podcasting is greater because a podcast can happen with one guy or two guys.
Yeah.
While in music, you very often need more than that. To get you going. From a business perspective, podcasting has more of an upside, in my opinion. There's more of an upside because the industry is forming now. And so we are creating the rules. Music is inheriting a lot of bad behavior and like long installed, really zimekita mizizi, bad things.
Yeah, the roots are
for so many years.
Yeah.
That
The roots are deep.
people are trying to unlearn, but are
Culture,
still,
practices,
Yeah.
industry nuances, norms.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of like the thing. The good thing of having an installed system is that there's also a benefit. You can move faster in music. Like there's a path to scale. If you start music today, you talk to an A&R guy, he knows how to get you there.
What's A&R?
Artists and repertoire. They're kind of guys who decide who makes it.
Yeah.
So that there's a person in music who decides who makes it.
They package you.
It feels like a gatekeeper
how to get
also.
you there. Yeah. You could say that the gatekeepers, but gatekeepers are negative connotation. I'd say A&R people are more optimizers.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
they know
good.
how to get the thing to where we need it to be without you doing too much work. They have a formula. In podcasting, that's kind of wide open. So it's harder for a podcaster to do that because there's no formula. Easier for a musician. On the other side is in music, you inherit a lot of bad things that maybe you shouldn't inherit.
Yeah. Let's speak about the industry now.
Yeah.
You have a thriving podcast studio.
Yeah.
And I think you have bookings maybe all 7 hours a day or 9 hours a day.
No, not all the hours, but yeah.
Most of, like a big percentage.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the future of podcasting looks like? What does this industry look like? Because there are several industries, across different pockets of industry around the world. But I want to double click on Africa's future of podcasting. We spoke a bit about it when we met. Yeah.
I think it will work differently in Africa than it will work anywhere else in the world. First of all, because Africa has a much different orientation to audio and a much different orientation to stories and storytelling.
Wait, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Audio and storytelling. Okay. Orientation. Okay.
If I put it like kind of the agricultural explanation is that
industrial.
Yes, radio is still the biggest communication platform Africa-wide.
Yeah.
And so the places that radio is are immediately like potential markets for podcasting. And radio has not yet been removed from the market. It's still the primary mode of communication across the continent. So if you find a way to put podcasting in the distribution system of radio, you're going to be like,
you made it
unbelievably rich. If you think of all other markets, radio is no longer what it used to be.
Yes.
I think about that in terms of audio. The audio medium, very much like books, leave the imagination to you.
Yes.
So we provide we put you on the path, but you add the pictures in your mind and you imagine what's being said on the other side and you make the characters, which is a very powerful means of interacting with somebody because the imagination is theirs. And there'll be as different pictures as there are people.
Yes.
America, Europe don't have this anymore. It's lost. You have to put the imagination on the screen because they are no longer in radio. They're no longer imagining. They are just consuming.
Feed me, yeah.
Yeah. And so then that consumption of material in that way means that they are ready to pay, ready to consume things now. So what they need is different. Yeah. While the African population is probably going to need also different things, but they are more willing to bring more things to the story than the Western populations are.
Yeah, but I'm also liking what podcasts are unlocking, or this new form of media is actually unlocking. But you're right. Probably now it's an urban phenomena.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, Kenya has over 300 radio stations.
Yeah.
Have hundreds of TV stations. I mean, we have the major ones, but so many coming out vernacular, very homogeneous ones. But I'm loving what these new forms are unlocking. And when you talk about storytelling, that's a big thing. There's a way we tell our stories, and it's unlocking very new, different dimensions in terms of preserving our some of the stuff I was looking at, especially when we had Zain over, how she's curating African stories told and stories told from our eyes, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
What are the trends that you're seeing around podcasting? I mean, given that one of the things you're telling us is you have done thousands of podcasts.
The trends are, I guess maybe I'd say
what's shaping them? What are the trends? What does it take to be successful in podcasting? Yeah. Because I found that very interesting as well, given that we are trying as well.
Yeah.
What do you see?
So I would say, first of all, we don't have, I don't think anybody has a formula, but I do think that just on the strength of us as Semabox making so many shows across the markets that we're working in, all the way to South Africa, Ghana, Zambia, there are things we are seeing that work. One is authenticity. It's definitely important that you're telling the story from an authentic storyteller perspective. So there's no Spielberg for your story. You are your own director, right? And you're your own protagonist.
Authenticity.
It has to be your story. And the second thing that I think is really, really important, and Chris Mungai is the one who coined this phrase, is that you have to tell the story that only you can tell, which kind of speaks to like ownership,
identity. Yeah.
This is my story,
tell the story
only you can tell. Tell the story that only you can tell.
Yeah.
It's a Chris Mungai
who's Chris Mungai?
Phrase, the curator of Baraza.
Okay.
So she's been talking about that idea, and I think it's a very powerful idea that drives podcasting. We are not interested in you telling us about that guy. Yeah, we want to hear about you. If we're coming to you, we want to hear about you. And that's an important thing that's driving podcasting globally, in my opinion. And beyond that, is just the podcasting new media is bringing long form media to the mainstream. If you think of all the other media, we're always seeing people in short spurts because we have to interrupt for advertising. We have to interrupt for something else. TV is the worst, right? You do links. Radio also links. But podcasting is like, we're going to talk to this guy for 45 minutes. It's going to be uninterrupted.
Yeah.
We can dive in.
Yeah.
We can zoom out. We can, and my train of thought is not being interrupted by, we have this new offer for this type of soap. I can stay on the topic and go. The one caveat is that the biggest podcast distribution platform in the world at the moment, in my opinion, is YouTube.
Yes.
And YouTube is really disturbing us with all this nonsense they're throwing in.
Yeah.
And so maybe there'll be a better platform coming in. But I think if you're authentic, if you're telling a story that's yours, and if you're able to give this really uninterrupted train of thought, then you're on your way to success.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Another thing is, I remember, even as we're looking at podcasts and how you've been transitioning to and fro, the business of music, I remember there's some stuff you were talking to us about, whether it was the creativity, the business, in terms of the path to that. Who is Dan Aceda in terms of when it comes to did you give up that whole music thing element of yours? Is it still there? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? Did you run away from it? Are you still producing?
I'm still producing. I didn't run away. I just think that as a live musician, COVID was a very understated nuclear bomb that hits there. Because people are like, oh, we have to stay home, right?
Yeah.
It was like casually, or if you stay home, the problem is solved. For live musicians,
that's a problem.
It was death.
And that was you.
Like we were totally finished. Yeah, and my work has primarily been in the live scene.
Yeah.
And so we had to totally rethink what our existence as musicians was going to be.
Yeah.
100%. Because now guys could not meet anywhere. They couldn't, we couldn't go to where they were. Like there was no solution.
But mainly a lot had moved online.
Yeah, so people tried to move to online. And I think there was a very good attempt. I did a very big attempt with Studio Tisa. We curated all these fantastic concerts and they're on YouTube and people watch them and they love them. But man, being in the space when the guy sings the note
is different from...
it's different. It's got a different quality. And perhaps that's why post-COVID, the live scene is popping so much across the world. People want to go and experience the music now because they missed it. And I think it's an important thing. For me, as a musician, going back to live has been a longer journey than I thought it would be. But that's because I underestimated how much of an interruption COVID was. And so I'm on my way back, of course. I'm thinking about that. And I'm going to play this year. I promised myself last year that I'd play at least twice more than I played last year.
Yeah, I came for some of your shows. It was pretty
I
cool.
played one gig last year. So this year I want to play 2.
Oh, okay. Gig. Okay, cool.
So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It never goes away. I still have very strong thoughts on the industry. I have very long roots, connections in the industry. I'm still very connected to the people. I have a wonderful songwriting project that I'm on now for a younger musician who's working on his records. I'm happy to sing or to write on his record. And I'm still working on. I'm working on something which should hopefully be out around Easter this year.
Yeah.
So that's also good. We will see how it goes out. It never goes away from you. It's just that going back to the idea of your train of thought, you can't. It's difficult to when you're a task shifter like me.
Yeah,
it's difficult to shift and also work on this other task.
Yeah.
So you kind of shift and are here for now.
I mean, some of the things we saw with Wago was like you've been catching waves, like in terms of trends and always riding them. Like for example, even when you began your music, I mean, and looking at your records, you were also pushing boundaries in terms of, say, the music scene.
Yeah.
Right. And so, of course, you see your architecture, which, of course, is a very technical thing, but has a lot of creativity. You have your music, 3 albums down.
Yeah.
And you are pushing the boundaries for that, and you come into podcasting and catch that wave.
Yeah.
Like, what does Dan think about all this, or in terms of...
It's interesting. I
really want to hear about the music story, especially,
the music. So I've always felt, I guess deep down, like you're saying, that I was catching a wave or that I was seeing the wave before the rest of the guys. But we had someone come in here, one of our clients came here, I think it was last year, it wasn't last year. And she was very excited to see me, which was very flattering for me. She's extremely excited. But she said something that has really stuck in my mind because other people had said it to me before.
Yeah.
And I had never fully believed it.
Yeah.
And she said that I was the one, in her view, that I was the one that was triggering the next level and the next wave for Kenya music. And she says, when you did this stuff, and she said, when you did this song, then everybody else started to do that style. And we did this song, everyone started following, and we did this. And I said, okay, when you say it that way, I believe it. Even me who, was living it and I never thought about it. But I do think that the story of, for instance, Sulue, my first album, I really do believe now that was a foundational album that set the tone for all the other albums that came after it.
Please tell us that story, or dialing into Sulwe in terms of the context within which it was coming in.
Yeah, because when we're working on Sulwe, what is on the air is...
Which year was that? That was
Sulwe comes out in 2005. Actually, this is the 20th anniversary of Sulwe.
Yeah.
Sana's anniversary is in 2 months, actually. I remember the date. But when we're working on that, the music that's on radio is Daddy Owen. Nameless, of course, Wahoo. Ogopa is a big thing.
Necessary Noise.
Necessary Noise, has the album come out? Or no, the album came way earlier.
Yeah.
Necessary Noise came way earlier. But Isa is gone story by that time, but that's the music on radio. On the other side, it's what the music was. They used to call it world music, and I really dislike the phrase, and I'm so sorry, but I really dislike the phrase Afrofusion. I really hated the phrase because I thought this phrase means absolutely nothing. It was like, what does it mean? Afrofusion.
A fusion of African beats.
So what's African?
And
then now what's the fusion? So like, because
that's a very good question.
I was like, African? This is just so bad. I couldn't. Yeah. I never lived that phrase very well, and I struggled. And I respected the artists that were there, but they were making music that was built for was very much based on the Mzungu's experience of our music. So what the Mzungu wanted to experience is what was the underlying rubric of that songwriting, because when you listen to it as a warm-blooded Nairobi person, it didn't hit you. It didn't hit you. But when you listen to it as maybe as a guy who's in Mombasa or whatever, you come on holiday, then it hits you. Because it has the acrobats and that ethnic
the traditional
stuff,
dancers,
So I was really concerned about that, and writing the album, I was really committed to the idea that we needed to write music that was going to be relatable to a person living in Nairobi right now who has the roots, right, of the ethnic stuff, has the roots of that, but also has the aspirational stuff of I want to live in a global community, and the global community is acting in a specific way.
Yes.
And so I began this idea of, okay, if my base is Benga, and that's what I have come from, you know, Dio Misiani, my dad played all those records, so that's what I know. But I also know R&B, and I also know jazz, and I also know, so these things must come into this music.
Yeah.
But it cannot be fully African because Benga is not fully African. So it's not Afrofusion. It's going to be, at most, Dan Aceda fusion of
Benganology.
Right. So then, even when I was going, so because I was being produced by Kanji, who just come from America, I feel like in Kijiji, they let me try, but they also didn't let me try because they're really holding me back. They're like, we want him to do this thing, but we also want it to be commercially viable. So they put me in the constraints. And we made a wonderful album in Sulwe that helped us. But I really started to explore that stuff in Benganology because then I had clarity. And I knew Benganology, biology, study of Benga. That's what I was trying to do.
Good.
And so I wanted to add it. I wanted to add those things that I had learned into the Benga sound. And actually, here's another story that I want to share very quickly. They were writing a book called Benga, writing the story of Benga. The book was called The Story of Benga.
Who is they?
Ketable Music and Tabo Susa, who's a wonderful music historian. And he was writing that book and he said Story of Benga. And at that time, Tabo was very much a purist. The Benga music was always the Benga music, not allowed to change. So we used to have all these conversations around the sound and what's changing. And he was like, no, but the sound needs to be X. And I kept advocating that the sound must evolve. The sound must change. And even these new things are still Benga, even though they are changing. And we began to argue. And one day, we used to argue every day because our studios were next door. So we used to go for lunch and this was the topic. Yeah. So we were talking every day. And he's a wonderful guy. And I made the proposal to him that, listen, you cannot write about Benga. You've got to write about types of Benga, not Benga.
And what is Benga?
Good.
So then they wrote the book, Shades of Benga, which now allowed and opened the door for, okay, so this is Dio Misiani, but This is Nonini.
It's a spectrum.
Yes, there's more nuance. And Nonini is playing the things in the same register. It's in the same chord progressions. Same melodies are the same. It's a type. So accept it and let's move. Benga music, I would say, fundamentally, is three things. It's always melody, a sweet melody. They pitch it around guitars and stringed instruments in general. And it's heavily on storytelling.
Yeah.
I would say broadly that's what it is. There are more technical definitions, but I'd say that's what it is.
So Dan is all these things.
Yeah.
Now Dan the founder, the businessman. What's that looking like?
Mistakes kila siku.
6 years. Is it 6
I
years
want to
later?
hear about the mistakes. 6 years. How many years has it been now in Semabox?
Before.
Has this been your most successful venture so far?
Yes.
From a monetary perspective, but probably.
Not from a monetary
or what's your
perspective.
currency? Like in terms of how do you look at it? Is it that you've pushed the boundaries of creativity? Is it that from a monetary perspective, yes, it's brought something?
Yeah. No. I think from a monetary perspective, my music is the most successful venture.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
I would be interested in Semabox would be, I guess, because I was always interested in the infrastructure and building infrastructure, architecture. Yeah. So here we've finally built infrastructure for creation,
Creativity.
which was really important for me.
Which is your activist bit, which is you've got to push this industry forward.
Yeah. So we need somebody has to invest in it for the long fall. So for the long haul. So I'd say that's the thing. There's so many mistakes, guys. We at some point we thought that we could record label the podcasting industry. We could kind of invest in all these shows, and that they could then go and make money, and we could have a share in that money, which was a very record label approach to the shows. And we realized that was not a thing. Not because we didn't succeed in the making, but it's that the creators are not ready for that type of engagement. And that was a big mistake. I think we spent a lot of money doing that. I would also say that we spent, one of the other things that I'd say is a mistake on us was thinking or spending a lot of brain power thinking that what we were doing was unique and special. I don't think that was.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No, no, and there are studios every day. There's a new studio every day for.
Especially now. Nowadays, every time I'm just like, hey, new studio, create a studio.
And we spent too much time thinking that we could make this special studio. I think that was a mistake. And so now I really believe that. Like I was saying earlier, execution is where the game is.
Yeah.
Maybe another mistake I could say is staying small too long.
Okay.
That's good.
I think we stayed a two-man team, just me and Doris, for too long. We should have been there should have been more people.
Wait, let me ask you about that, because I do know that there's also that kind of tension between entrepreneurs when you're growing and the business is growing, but you still want to do everything. You still want to be the producer, the director, the client, the client service, everything.
The strategist, the CEO, the accountant.
And you really can't do it all.
Yeah.
So can we talk about more? Can you tell us more about why did you decide to move from being a two-man team or was it the circumstances that made you move?
Yeah, I don't think I made the decision to move. I think people dragged me across the line. Maurice Otieno told me, tomorrow you need to hire someone. Tomorrow.
Yeah, like they need to report tomorrow.
Yeah, he said tomorrow, I need a decision on someone tomorrow. So I was like, I don't know the money. I was like, I don't even care.
Yeah.
To get this done tomorrow, which I think was very useful. Then I'd still try to record all day and edit all night for another 2 months.
You wanted to arrive dead.
Yeah, I was arriving here morning totally dead and trying to do it. So he dragged us across that. Mudhuri Kinyamu, who's another good friend of mine, is the CEO of Turn Up Travel, who you should also have here.
Yeah.
Mudhuri is one who dragged me across the getting somebody to do non-production stuff. Yeah, he just came here. I think he sat here. I think he was recording something. He sat here for a day and he just told me, I think you need to hire somebody who's not primarily a producer. I said, so what do they do? He said, somebody to take photos and put on the internet.
Yes.
And he sent me somebody's CV.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, we didn't hire this person, but you don't have anybody else you're looking at. Hire this person. So he told me, call them. And that person still works here, by the way. So Mudhuri dragged me across that one. And I think it was a mistake not to do it. We were doing it, but not deliberately. So I think that was a mistake. I also think from a now like admin, hardcore business, offering a pay later option was not a good. That was a mistake.
Okay.
Record now, pay later.
We've lost a lot of money.
Because they keep recording.
Like, trust Kenyans.
Yeah, because people kind of don't commit to it. There's something about a prepayment that
commitment.
Yeah, that commits. So we've lost a lot of money in the.
And that's a lesson in business, by the way.
Yeah.
In terms of your business model, in terms of
bank your money. Bank your money. How much was it today? 4K? Bank it.
Bank it.
Let's talk about something
you
else.
put the money, let's talk.
Put the money in the bank.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are kind of the ones on the top of my mind. Other than that, there's many others. Every day is like a learning experience here, especially. I'm learning a lot how to. I come from architecture, music, where in architecture, you conceptualize the building and the architectural process that the architect is at the top of the tree after the client. And then the architect holds the maximum amount of information, the most amount of information of everyone. So then things have to go through you, right? From the client to the engineer, to the QS, to the builder, to the thing. But in creation, what I'm learning and what I'm feeling strong about is in many ways, things actually need to pass over there. They shouldn't pass next to me. Not through me. They need to pass there. I just need to see them.
Yeah,
but they don't need to pass through me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is excellent.
Interestingly, though, in my forays into talking to entrepreneurs and with Wago as well, thinking small, staying small. When you start your business, when you start small, you remain small.
Yeah.
Has there been a shift? Because I think, again, when we were addressing this thing, when we began this podcast, the issue was always, and Kevin as well, when you listen to Peter Ndoati, Kevin, most of our guests as well, that mindset for I'm starting a small business affects how you scale up eventually, and it can keep you there for a long time.
Yeah.
Has that shifted for you? And what lessons have you drawn from that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I understand the thought that if you once you call it a small business, you want to stay there. I get that.
Yes, but
what I think is that you've got to see the business that you have now. I think you had a small business at some point, and then you have a different business after a year.
Yes,
and you have to see that one, and it's different from the first one. And I guess the guys who do a startup ecosystem guys, they are forced into it because you have to pitch every day. And so you ask all these questions every day. Mumefika wapi? Mumeuza nini? So you will always seeing your business. You're always analyzing your business. Which I think for the rest of us who are not doing that fundraising, you're not analyzing enough. But again, what I would say is the business changes and the path to scale changes, and you need to be with it. Sometimes the business is ahead of you.
You miss it.
Yeah, I that's happened to me multiple times. Like I've told you guys before, that the business was ahead of me and somebody else saw that and dragged me across the line. And that's why I think that it's really nice for people to have a co-founder or a partner.
Yes.
Or a board.
They are the ones who kind of, when you're low, they
pick it up.
They pick you up. And then when you're not seeing something, they see there's something.
Iron
and then
sharpens iron.
Yeah. And so me, I didn't have a co-founder. I guess Chris and Maurice have become kind of the co-founders.
Yeah.
But to see that was important. The first time, I think it was Chris who put us on a project that we didn't do very well on, by the way. But she was like, I think you can do this, which is another person from externally saying, you're ready for this thing. Why are you hesitating? But she put us on a project. Yeah, we let her down, but Chris, tunakupenda bado, tutasawazisha in the future. But
you at least you learned.
Making us see that. And I think that's important. So I would say to the question is, the small mindset is, hopefully people can see the business they actually have.
Yeah.
Not the one
it's probably
that's in their head.
Yeah.
And that's negatively and also positively. Yeah.
You know, I think about your architecture journey and how that's still played a part in your life. I feel like architects begin with the end in mind and then kind of start working it back.
Yeah.
I feel like for you, you're in service to a certain vision. And so what does that future look like for you?
Because, architecture.
Yeah, not architecture, just beginning your business, what does the end look like for you? Because I feel like architects are primed for beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And so it's a really big assumption, but I assume that there are parts of you that want a future. And what does that future look like?
No, I think I wanted kidogo to tetea architects, but then I was like, they frustrated me. I think that for me, the future is that what we are doing now, what we are testing in digital media and digital content in general, is at some point has to then start challenging mainstream media or feeding mainstream media. So at some point we are beginning to challenge it or to feed it. So the path is that way. I've seen there's some evidence of this in America, especially. I think in Australia also kidogo, where you're seeing a lot more independent platforms being the actual story source and not the mainstream.
Right.
Which
Joe Rogan
and the presidential
Trump stories. Yeah.
So I feel like that's going to be there. But I also feel like the challenge is on us, digital and alternative guys, to find the business model and to find the value proposition to move us to the next thing. Because the mainstream guys are a very strong value proposition and a very strong model.
Yes.
Right. So even when they're not good on ideas, they still have that infrastructure.
Yeah.
So for us, we've got to build that stuff. And that's a major, that's the future. The future is whoever finds a way to feed mainstream or to kill them.
What's your preference?
My preference is to feed them. I think there are things they have that we don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've already established the infrastructure.
The infrastructure will probably change, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think it will probably change.
Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
This has been cool. And I think we've learned a lot. And we must have you back again, because I just felt like we're just warming up because now we're just getting into it. Yeah. And this is amazing and lots of lessons. Because I was writing down here, Dan, the activist to innovator to the architect to the creative soul who's a musician.
Multi-hyphenate.
Most hyphenate. And multi-hyphenate. And the founder as well. And this has been an absolute treat. Any parting shots, anything? No. But this has been cool. Thanks for
having me as well on the show. I guess just keep doing it.
And thanks for supporting us. And I think for the encouragement that you give us.
Yeah.
For just like, guys, put it out there. Let's see what happens.
And the truth is, you can't improve on something you've not done.
Yeah.
And I think even for me, the one thing that stood out the first time we started doing this was Dan was just like, the set doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Just be authentic.
Yeah. Be yourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, I'll take this thing in when tell a story only you can tell.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, So guys, please, as usual, like, subscribe. So that you can get a notification. And we can keep growing this podcast and keep bringing you guys content.
Dan, what are your social media handles?
At Dan Aceda.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. And for Semabox?
We'll put all that stuff.
Yes.
I think that will be cool.
Africa.
At Semabox
everywhere.
Thanks.
Well done. Good and faithful servant. Yes.
Santi, thanks so much, guys.